Welcome back. So this is the final video on controlling constraints using code. The final constraint is the cylindrical constraint, and it is the most powerful constraint because it allows you to rotate in two directions as well as move in one direction. So here we have an example of what we're going to be building in this lesson. So let me show you what it does. Get a little closer, zoom out a little bit. So there are three buttons here, and each of them will change something about this constraint. And this light blue part is the part that is going to move. So you can change an angle. This changes an angle this way and back. This changes the angle this way and back. And then this one moves the platform up and down. And you can do these in combination also, which lets you do some more complicated moves. Okay, so let's see how would we build this. So the first thing we need to do, I'll just do it over here on this side. First thing we need to do is attach all of the parts, or let's go ahead and create the parts that we'll be using. So let's get a block, and let me change the material on this. And the color, actually the color's okay on that. Put it up in the sky. One thing, you do want to have this high enough so that it doesn't bump into the ground. That will cause it to stop. Okay, and let's make this, let me think. Let's see what a good size for this would be. Let me put this one away. So I'm going to call this the frame because it's going to be the part of this constraint object that doesn't move. And let's make this is going to be anchored because this is not going to move. And let's make this, let's change the size. So we can make it a little longer because we're going to have to put 3 buttons on this. Let's make it 8. The height 1 is fine. And the width, let's make that 4. That looks pretty good. Actually, maybe a little longer. Let's make it 12. That way there's plenty of room for the buttons. Okay, and then what I want to do is just kind of copy this. So I'm going to turn collisions off, make a duplicate, and move it over. And this one I'm going to call, just because I don't really have a better name for it, the door, because this is the part that's going to move. Okay, and I'm going to change the color on this. I'm going to make this something different. That'll work. And I'm going to, let's see, oh, this one does not need to be anchored since it is going to move. And that's actually fine. Okay, you can make these obviously any size you want. Okay, now let's get the buttons. So I need another part. And let me bring this up and over. And let me turn collisions back on. Let me change the size. This will be, I'm going to call this, we're going to have 3 buttons, so we're going to have to name them differently. So button 1, I'll just call it. Okay, and let's make it a good size. Let's say, I don't know, 212 maybe. Let's try that. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, let's change the color on this. I'll make this one yellow and neon. And I'll bring it over here, and I will drop it. Okay, and I think, there we go. And we're going to need 3 of these. And actually these we can just anchor since they're not going to be moving. So anchor that, button 1. And we're going to need 3 of these. So let me go ahead and make a couple of duplicates. So 1, 2. Let me move them over. Okay, let me change the colors on these. Doesn't really matter what colors you choose for these. The other thing I want to do is I want to name these. So let me call this one button 1, this one button 2, and this one button 3. Just want to have these named differently. Okay, and then let me just make sure everything's aligned. So I'm going to go to the top view, zoom out, and bring this over into the center. And then that's actually close. This one could move a little bit more. And this one could move a little bit more. Actually, I guess. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so now we have the 3 pieces, or we have the pieces for our object, which is going to use this cylindrical constraint. So let's go ahead and attach the cylindrical constraint. So let me move this over so we can see what we're doing. And let me get in there where that gap is, because that's where we're going to place our constraint. Okay. And now let me go over to the model menu, click on create, and this is going to be a cylindrical. And these directions, again, they're going to determine which way this thing moves. So I'm just going to have them both pointing up. Then and then the piece that moves will move up. But if you wanted it to move along horizontally, you would just point that arrow, that yellow arrow, this way. But I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to do the other one the same way. Okay, now let me make sure these are centered. Although I guess it doesn't really matter. But let me make sure anyway. I didn't get it quite in the middle, but we can move these. So let me turn on my move button, click on this attachment. There it goes. And then this one, and click on the, oh, I guess I didn't click on it. There it goes. Now that looks like it's in the middle. It's really hard to tell sometimes. Yeah, that's in the middle. Okay. So now that I've got this attached, what I want to do is move this piece back so that it's right on top. We want those 2 attachments to be right on top of each other. Okay. And that is actually it as far as all of the pieces and the connections. Let me think. Oh, I almost forgot. I need click detectors on all of these buttons. So let me put click detectors on them. Okay, and I'm gonna select everything using Control left click, and then I am going to group it. So let's do that. Control left click everything. That is everything. Now let me group this stuff. There we go. And I'm gonna call this. I really haven't figured out a good use for this one yet. I mean, you can do anything you want, right? You could create like a robot arm that you can control with buttons, or I don't know, some kind of bridges that move in different directions that you have to figure out how to put them together to cross over something. But let's call this, I don't know, let's call this cylindrical constraint. Let's call it, I guess I'll just call it, man, I can't even think of a name for this thing. It moves in 3. I'll call it arm, actually, because it does kind of move like an arm. Yeah, I'll call it arm. Okay, so now we have all of the pieces inside of this arm, and we also need a script. And I'm just going to put it at the top. So I'm going to add a script here, and I'm going to call it script arm. Okay, let me get rid of this. Now we're going to do the same kind of procedure that we did before with, coding this. We're just going to do it 3 times, and we're going to do it all inside of one script. Okay, so this will be some good practice, some good review. Let's see, where is there's my cylindrical constraint. So we're going to go through this one step at a time. We're going to wire each of these up one at a time. We don't want to do everything. So let's see. The first thing, we're going to notice a couple of things here. This one has more options. So you can see here the angular actuator type, it has an option for that. And then the actuator type, it has an option for that. Okay, so let's do the simple one, which is the actuator type. You can see here that it says slider, and so I'm going to go ahead and call that a servo. Okay, then we're going to use the same settings we used before. So the servo max force I make 100,000, the speed I make 10, and the target position I'll leave at 0 for now, and we can change this once we get this working. Okay, and then let's see. That is it, I think. Target position. Yep. Okay. Now let's go ahead and test this. Let's make sure everything stays where it's supposed to. Which one is it? Oh, this one's, you know what? This one's a little too high. But you can see that it's staying right where it needs to. Okay, good. And let's test the servo. Make sure that the servo works. So what we're going to do is change the target position on this. Let's make it, I don't know, 5. Just want it to move a little bit. Okay. Yeah. And and you can actually see that's going to move. I think it's going to move up. Let's test it. And it does. Okay, so it's working. So great. All right. So let's change that back. So let's change it back to target position of 0. Okay, now let's go ahead and script some control for this. And I'm going to use button 1 to control this. So here we go. So again, we're going to need a function, and we're actually going to have 3 of these this time. So it's going to be on click. Let me just start numbering these. So this is going to be on click 1. Okay. And then we're also going to have a few variables here just to make it cleaner. And so what do we need? We need the click detector, right? So I'm going to call this click det1 because there's going to be 3 of these. And this first one is going to be, let's see, we're on the script. We're going to go up to the arm, so that's script.parent. And then we're going to go down to button 1, which is button 1. And then we're going to get the click detector, which is right here. You can just double click on these. Okay, so that's click detector 1. And then let's see, now that we have click detector 1, we can code our first event. So it's going to be click detect 1, click det1 dot, what is it, dot mouse click, connect, and then we put our function inside. Good. Okay, so let's test this. Let's just make sure it's working. So we're just going to do a little print statement. We're going to say you clicked. Okay, just to make sure everything's working. Again, you want to test as often as possible, just so that you don't. Oh wait, you know what? That's the wrong one. This is the. Oh, you know what? And I need to lower this. Oh, there it goes. It says you clicked. Okay, and let me. Yeah, I guess that's okay. We'll leave it up there for now. Okay, so now how do we code this? Well, we need to set another variable, and this variable is going to get us here to this cylindrical constraint. So I'm just going to call it CYL const, just like that, nice and short. Now this one, okay, let's see, we're at the script. We need to go up, so that's script.parent. Then we need to go down to the frame, and then we need to go down to the cylindrical constraint. And that's it. Okay, so now that we have the cylindrical constraint, we're going to have our if then statements, and we're going to have an else. Whoops. Oh, I wonder why I did that. Else. I don't know why it's doing that. Hold on, let me try this again. It's strange. Okay, if, there we go, else. Huh, doesn't seem to work. I guess I can just type it in. Okay, So what do we want to check? We want to check what the target position is for this first cylindrical constraint. So we're going to say CYL const dot, and this is going to be the target position. And there's actually going to be 3 of these. There's like target position, target angle, and inclination angle. But the first one we're doing is target position. And we want to check if it's equal to 0. That's the starting position. Okay, so if it's equal to 0, we're going to make it some other value. We're going to make it, I don't know, 5. 5 is a good value. Okay, now if it isn't equal to 0, we want to make it 0, because those are our 2 values. We want to go between 5 and 0. And remember, when you're checking if it's equal, it's 2 equal signs. When you're setting a value, it's just 1 equal sign. Okay, so this should actually work. This might be all that we need. Let's go ahead and test it. And let me turn around this time. And let me zoom out. Okay, here we go. So if let me actually go this way. And there it goes. It works. Let me zoom out some more. Click on it. Goes back. Click on it. Goes up. And I'm not sure why there's those pauses. It might just be my computer glitching. Let's see, because it goes smoothly now. Yeah, okay, good. So the first one works. Now, let's go ahead and script the rest of this. And once you do this one time, the rest of them are pretty easy. And, you know, this thing, you could do most of, actually, you could build this same thing by combining 2 prismatic constraints and 1 hinge constraint, right? But this kind of does it all in one, right? But you could get this same effect by combining the other constraints. Okay, so let's do another one. So we're gonna need another click det. Let's just copy it, and then I'll just change the numbers. So I'm gonna copy this line, copy, paste. Okay, and I want to change the numbers from 1 to 2, 2, and then 2. Okay, the cylindrical constraint is the same, but now we're going to make a copy of this one. Okay, so I'm going to copy the whole thing. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to go ahead and shrink this one or collapse it by clicking on this little arrow. Change the number. This one's 2. And now this one isn't going to change the target position. It's going to change something else. But let me shrink this a little bit. That's good. Okay, let me go down a little bit. And we're also going to make another one of these. We're going to make another event, because we need 3 events for 3 buttons. So now we're going to say Control C to copy it, paste it, Control V, and I'm going to put 2 here and 2 here. Okay. Now on this one, we don't want to change the target position. Let's look at our cylindrical constraint. And if you notice right here, we have angular actuator type. So let's go ahead and change that to servo. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff here. And here it is. This one is inclination angle. And let me see if there's settings for this one too. Let's see. There's the servo. I don't know what this drive thing does. Okay, we've got that one. And let's see. Inclination angle. Oh, here it is. Okay, here are the settings for this servo. So angular responsiveness 45 sounds fine. Let's make this a 10. Make this 100,000. And then target angle. So this one, okay, actually we have 2 now, okay? And this can get a little confusing because there's 2 angles and 1 slider. Okay, but let's just go over to the top. Okay, so the first one is this angular servo, and this is what's going to control how strong the angle motor is and how fast it moves, right? And this is the first angle. This moves it, I think, horizontally. And then you also have another one, an inclination angle, and that moves it kind of up and down. Okay, so we've set the servo for both of those angles. We've set the strength of the motor for both of those angles, but there are 2 different target angles. Okay, and you'll see. So this one we're going to change. So we're going to change target angle. So we're going to change it from 0 to 90. We'll try that. So let me go ahead and change this to angle and change all 3 of them to angle. Okay, last one. And then we're gonna have to kind of experiment because sometimes it's 90 and sometimes it's negative 90. So let's try 90. So delete 90 and let's try it. So I think everything is ready. Let's test it and see if this works. So this should be the second button. Oh, and you know what? Something's gonna happen here that I forgot to do. Watch. I think it's gonna have some trouble because I haven't set a certain property. Let's see. Oh, it didn't actually. It went right through it. Good. Okay, it's working. So it's going, this one is the angle that moves kind of vertically. And I did pick the right angle. You can change it. So see how now this is the 0 position. And if you pick 90, it moves down, or I guess you could say clockwise. But you can change that if you make it negative 90. And you can pick any angle you want actually here. So let's do negative 90 and watch what happens. Now it should rotate up or counterclockwise. Oh, you know what? And I wasn't even looking at the right one. Let's let me see if this works still. Oh, it doesn't. Hold on, let me make sure. So it might work now. Watch. Yeah, it does. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. So this angle actually, I mean, I was looking at the wrong one before. Man, this thing just does not let me. Okay, so this one moves it up and down. But right here, if I try to move the angle, nothing happens. And the reason is because it's bumping into this frame here. So you have to move it up and then the angle moves. So let me show you how to fix that. It's really easy. All you do is you go to your frame here and you turn off can collide. That way it'll be able to pass through it. No problem. Okay, so let's test that again. Let me turn around, make sure I'm testing the right one. And let me zoom out. Okay, this one, this is the one that should move it. So now it should pass right through. And it does. Okay, good, good. Yeah, it's weird how the first time it's not very smooth, but after it kind of is. It might be some setting. Okay, so now I can move it and then change the angle. Good. And I can move it back. Move it, change the angle, move it back. And it works. Okay, so we've got that one working and we just have to wire up the last one. So let's go back to our script and we're gonna do a little copying and pasting. So we're gonna need a third click det. So I'm just gonna copy it. And you could have done this in 3 scripts, but I just think it's easier to do it in 1. And here's the thing, like when you start coding, you're not going to have a script for every little thing. You're going to have one script and it's going to control a whole bunch of stuff. Otherwise it just gets too messy having all these scripts all over the place. Okay. And when you're doing this, make sure that you don't forget the numbers. The numbers are really important. If you start seeing some weird bugs when you're doing this, make sure that because what I will see students do is they'll forget to change the number, and this will cause all kinds of weird effects. So make sure you check that your numbers are right. All right, so let's go ahead and make a copy of the function. This is going to be really easy. We're just going to change it from target angle to inclination angle. Control C, paste, Control V. Let me collapse this one and change the number on this one. Okay, and let me just scroll this. Okay, now this one, instead of target angle, it's the other one. So if you look at the cylindrical constraint, there's 2 of them, right? There's target angle here, and there's inclination angle here. And they move in different directions, okay? So you just have to change those. So this will be inclination angle, and inclination angle, and inclination angle, okay? And then we need a third click detector, or a third event for the click. So copy, paste, and then change the numbers. Delete 3, delete 3. Okay, so now everything should be wired up. The only thing is, will this angle work? So right now I have an angle of -90 on this, and it shouldn't matter. It's just going to move it sideways. So let's see which direction that moves. So we're going to go ahead and test it. So play. Turn around, use the one I'm making. Let me go over there. And let me zoom out. Okay, so again, this one moves it up and down. This one moves it sideways, rotates it sideways. And this one should rotate it up and down. And it does. Oh, and look at that. I barely cleared the floor. So yeah, that was a good thing I put it that high actually. Oh, but you know what you can do? Here we go. Here, let me show you this. So it's moving down. So if I make that angle the opposite sign, so that's the inclination angle. Yeah, if I make that 90, then I can actually lower my little arm down to the floor. Watch. Because now this angle will go, whoops, this angle will now go up. All right, great. So let me go ahead and lower that now that I have the angles all figured out. Okay, so let me click on my move button, click on this and move it down. And it doesn't have to be all the way to the floor, but it's easier if it's a little lower. Right there's good. Okay, now let's go ahead and test it. And the reason I want to do this is so I can get on it. It's just more fun if it's on there. Okay, so let me go on here. And what should happen when I click the green button is it'll move me up and down. Very nice. And let me move to the end. Okay, and this one should move me sideways. Let's see if it does. It did, except the only thing is, oh. Yeah, and it works. And then the last one should kind of flip me off, or should flip me higher. Let's see if it works. Oh, okay, that's actually kind of perfect. And this should hit me in the head if I do it again. Nice. Yeah, and if it moves too fast, you actually can pass right through objects. Actually, I guess you can pass through them all the time. Huh. Oh, no, I guess just my head can. Yeah, because if I try to jump when I'm in there, it doesn't work. There we go. Okay, so this works. We have for lack of a better name, we have an arm that moves in 3 different ways, right? 2 rotations and 1 kind of position slider move. So slider, up and down, rotate, rotate. Oh, I'm gonna fall off. And then this one rotates up. Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so that is the last constraint that we can control with code. Okay, and this one, again, I'm sure there are some really great uses for it. I haven't been able to come up with something simple. Like I said, you could turn this into, I know there are games where you have to kind of figure out these puzzles in order to get out of rooms. And this could be a puzzle, right? You could have a bunch of these and you have to click these buttons in order to make these pieces align, right? Because you can move these buttons wherever you want. You could make this disappear. The other thing is you could have a bridge with a lot of choices when it comes to how it moves, right? And so you'd have to like figure out which button to press to get the bridge to move the way you want. I don't know. I'm sure there are lots of great uses for this, and I'm sure other people will come up with more creative ways to use this constraint. But that's it for controlling constraints with scripts. And that is actually it for this section. And so I will see you in the next video.